What is going on, everyone? For those of you guys that don't know me, my name is Benjamin Nowak, and for those of you guys that do, thanks for coming back and watching another video, and welcome back to the No Wake Nation. Now, this is probably one of my most requested videos of all time. For those of you guys that watch my videos a lot, you know that I run Garmin Panoptix, both Panoptix and LiveScope, so that's what this video is going to be focusing on. It's how to set up those units to get the most clear picture. My settings that I use when I go out to the body waters that I fish to get the most clear images to help me find, locate fish cover and structure underwater so that I can catch more and bigger fish, whether that's bass, whether that's crappie, whatever you guys are fishing for. I want to help you guys set up your graphs to get the best and cleanest and clearest pictures for both Panoptix traditional, your PS21, PS22, and I believe the PS31, but some of these settings are a little bit different, and the LiveScope, which is the brand new product from Garmin for this year. I'm going to run through my settings, share with you guys how I set up these graphs to get the cleanest, clearest picture. If you have any questions or comments, let me know down in the comments section below. I'll answer those as quickly as possible. So with that said, I'm going to dive into the graph screen recording right now. Okay, so for the sake of this video, I'm not going to switch out into simulation mode. It messes with some of the settings. So I'm just going to show you guys with this screen here, and I'm going to overlay some clips of what LiveScope and Panoptix traditional will look like with these settings. So first things first, we're going to start with the LiveScope, and we're going to hit the menu button on our graphs. That'll take you into the menu. Then I'm going to start with the LiveScope menu, and then you're going to hit the button that says select. Okay, so what I do when I go to a body of water with LiveScope, no matter where I'm fishing, the first thing I'm going to do is change my gain. I'm going to go to gain. I'm going to change it to auto medium. Hit select. Okay, it's going to change your gain to where it thinks it should be. Then I'm going to take it out on the water, and I'm going to try to get the image to have very minimal interference on the graph. Now, when I say interference, you're going to see like grain or grit up off the bottom. I want to have minimal interference, but I still want clear images of what's out in front of me. So I like to start at an area where I know there's like a tree or a stump or something that I know exists there, so I can tell what a good image looks like. Typically, it's bumping it down 2 or 3 points. Once I bump it down to where I think it needs to be, I'm going to hit back, and your gain will be set. Now, depth range for me will always be set at auto, because I never know necessarily how deep I'm going to be fishing. I want it to constantly be changing depth. What I do want to set, however, is forward range. Now, forward range is set at 70 feet. 70 feet is basically about a cast length for me. So if I can see something at 70 feet out, I typically can cast to that object. If it's further away than that, I don't really need to see it, because I'm probably not going to be able to cast to it right away. So 70 feet is what I set my forward range to. That's typically where I find my best images anyway, is less than 70 feet. Now, transmit, obviously on, and Sonar Setup. Here's where we're going to get into some of the other settings. Now, appearance is something that I played around with a little bit. The color scheme that I typically like when I'm trying to find fish is amber. So if I'm trying to look for fish up in the water column, or I'm fishing around grass, I'm going to like the amber color scheme. Now, this is something that one of the Garmin guys told me to try and play with, and it's made a big difference. When I'm fishing around trees or wood or stumps where I'm not actually looking to pinpoint fish, I like black emerald. Black emerald is the black and green color scheme. And when you're fishing around trees, when you're fishing around laydowns, or basically wood in the water, black emerald is a great color, gives you really good definition of that structure. I've also seen Paul Mueller play around with the yellow color scheme a lot. That's basically the yellow and the blues and the white background. And so I messaged him, I asked him, Paul, why are you choosing this color? Like, when are you using this? And he said anytime that he's not fishing around grass or not fishing around trees, he likes this because he gets really hard, definite returns when those fish are out in front of him. So if he's fishing in open water around sand, or open water around, you know, pea gravel where it's not really coming up off the bottom, he really likes that yellow color. So I thought that was interesting. It's not something I played around with a lot. Most of my color schemes are going to be amber and black emerald, because I just really like those two. So amber when I'm looking for fish, black emerald when I'm looking for wood or laydowns or stumps out in front of me. The color gain that I use is default. I really don't see a need for anything other than default. Trails when I'm using LiveScope are always going to be off. I do not want to see streaks on LiveScope. And the reason I do this is because LiveScope is a very high definition picture, and I feel like the trails are just going to minimize the definition. I think of LiveScope as your clear view, down view, and traditional Panoptix is like your 2D sonar. So we'll get into trails here in a little bit, but not with Panoptix LiveScope. I also don't do bottom fill, but it's something I've been looking at. It's kind of interesting because it basically fills in the bottom with a brown, and because of that, it makes it, if you're not sure what you're reading, a little bit easier to see like where grass is coming up off the bottom, or if there's a stump coming up off the bottom. But it's not perfect. It's not like the best bottom fill I've ever seen, so I leave it off. Grid overlay I don't have on. Grid overlay, if you had this on, what it would be is like the grid lines. So it would line up 10, 10, 20, 20, and it would show you like specifically how far out those fish are. I can pretty much tell. I've gotten to the point where I can look at my graph and say, okay, that fish is 10 foot out in front of me, and he's suspended up in the water column about 7 feet, right? Like, you'll develop that, but if you want that on, you can turn it on. I run it off. And also scroll history, I want off. What's unique about LiveScope is that it actually shoots the beam backwards as well. So if you look up here at the top of the screen, you'll see 0 is not where the picture ends. The picture actually ends back behind that 0 mark. What that means is your LiveScope transducer is shooting backwards. It's really unique when you're fishing for like those blade bait fish I was catching at the end of the year. You can see the fish like underneath the boat. You can see when you're going over rocks, if there's fish on the rocks. You can see really minute details, and I've actually caught fish flipping behind me using this feature. So if you have scroll history on, it's going to make a bar on the left side of the screen that might take away from that I guess shooting behind you feature a little bit more than what I have right here. So pretty simple when it comes to appearance. Noise reject I have set on medium. I'm just trying to get rid of some of the noise in the middle of the screen. Also, I really don't fish around a lot of other people, but this is something I noticed when I was fishing closer to other people. You would get a little bit more interference even if they're just running standard transducers. Also running both transducers, I'm going to get a little bit of interference because both transducers are shooting out in front of me. So noise reject is set on medium. TVG I have is off. TVG is time varied gain. What that means is it's going to allow you to shoot further out because it's going to change the amount of gain that it is shooting. I have it set to off. I don't want it to change the gain levels that I have. It's going to give you a little bit more interference or a little bit more noise in your picture, so I have it set to off. Something you can play with if you're fishing really deep water, but I typically don't fish any deeper than 30 feet, so I don't want time varied gain on. I want that off. Overlay data, I do not want any overlay data as a sidebar. However, on here, I do want it to show me the depth, the water temp, the unit voltage, the speed, and the time of day. Now, why I find that important is because when I'm fishing, I can have all this information in the top left of my screen where it's not really interfering with anything, rather than having a black sidebar on my actual picture, which is going to cut off or make my picture a little bit smaller. This is really important if you're running a smaller graph, maximizing your screen by using that overlay data. Now, installation, I don't play with this too much. Install depth, you could play with. I know on your trolling motor, when you have this in the water, it's probably about a foot under the water. You could change this to a foot down or 2 feet, depending on how deep your transducer's mounted. I have it as 0. Use AHRS, do not know what that is, so I leave that on. Calibrate compass, this is how you calibrate, so it kind of has it knows which direction it's pointing, and that way when you mark a waypoint out in front of you, it's going to mark the waypoint where it's actually at, not based on the direction it thinks your boat is pointing. Orientation forward, you can change this depending on how you're running your transducer. There's information on this in your mounting instructions, because if you mount it on the left side of your trolling motor, I believe you have to have it in forward. If you mount it on the right side of your trolling motor, I believe you have to have it in one of the other settings. Focus auto fresh, not entirely sure what that is. I've never played with this. Oh, it's the impact of the focus, so I'm not sure what that is, but there's freshwater and saltwater. Auto fresh is what I have mine set on. I don't play with it, like I said. So that's really the extent of my LiveScope setup. Pretty simple. Big things, the appearance, the gain, and the forward range. I recommend 70 feet for forward range. You can go out further if you feel the need, but 70 range is going to give you, in my opinion, the best picture. Now we're going to take a look at the LiveScope, or traditional Panoptix. Now, the transducer I'm running for traditional Panoptix LiveVu is the PS22. I've run the PS31 for a couple of years, and I really, really like that. The PS22 is the upgraded version. It's a lot smaller package, so you can put it on the head of your trolling motor. You can also point it directly down and do LiveVu down, but this is only for traditional Panoptix LiveVu forward. So we're going to go in here, we're going to go to menu on the graph, go to your LiveVu menu, hit select. This is LiveVu traditional Panoptix. That's what it's called, LiveVu. Now, this one is basically straight out of the box. Now, I know that's probably going to catch some people by surprise, but other than forward range, it's basically straight out of the box, put on my trolling motor. This is the best settings I've found, and I don't mess with it much. It's almost virtually perfect. So the gain that I'm using is auto medium. The depth range is auto. Again, I don't want it limiting my depth. I want to know exactly how deep I'm fishing because I want it to read that. I don't want to have to go and change it if I go to shallower water, deeper water, whatever. Forward range, however, you can read out a lot further with traditional Panoptix. Now, this is one of the benefits. You can set this to like 120 feet if you're fishing in like 30, 40 feet of water, and you're going to get a lot cleaner image. Again, think of it as standard 2D sonar. If you look at the image of traditional Panoptix, it's more blobby, it's more obvious that something is there, but it's less defined. So that's why it works further away from the boat. I have mine set to 80 feet. If I were fishing in water deeper than 20 feet, I guess 15 to 20 feet, I could set it all the way out to 110, 120 feet, identify things way, way out there with the PS22, and then get closer and figure out exactly what they are with the high definition of the LiveScope. So I have it at 80 feet currently, but if you're deeper than 15 feet, you can change it to about 110, 120 feet, depending on your preferences. Transmit, obviously, I currently have on in the Sonar Setup. This is where I really don't get into anything. You can play with different color schemes. My color schemes always stayed the same. I've always left it on blue. I've not played around with it much. I think blue gives me the cleanest, clearest picture. It's probably just because I've grown up or developed my talents or developed my experiences with Panoptix in the blue color scheme. You can play around. I've found blue to give me the cleanest picture. So I'm going to hit back. Color gain is going to be default. Trails. I do have trails, but I have them set on fast. So now you can change the speed of the trail. That's the length of the time that the trail is actually running on the screen. And the reason I have it set at fast is because I don't want to have a ton of clutter, but I do want to be able to see like if something's moving through the screen, right? So if something moves from left to right on my screen, I want to see a trail. If something's moving towards the boat, I want a trail behind it. If something's moving away from the boat, so on and so forth, I want to have a trail. Fast is the best because it keeps your screen a little bit clearer, but you can still get an image of the direction that fish are moving or you are moving in relation to cover or structure. So trails I have set at fast on the traditional Panoptix LiveVu. Bottom fill, the same thing. It overlays a brown feature on the bottom. This is not something to play around with a ton, but it's something that you can play around with if you'd like. Grid overlay I have hidden. However, scroll history on this one, it does not shoot behind the boat. So I like the scroll history. It almost acts as a 2D sonar. Now it's not 2D sonar, but it almost acts as a 2D sonar there on the left side of the screen, and I've not really noticed it taking up too much of the screen where I don't want it on. I have it showing just in case I miss something that's right under the boat. I really like that scroll history. Noise reject on this one I have as low. This one just really doesn't pick up as much noise as the traditional or as the LiveScope, and I think the reason for that is because it's a little bit lesser high definition. The transmission signal is a lot smaller as far as kilowatts or kilohertz. So I have it set as low. I just don't think it's picking up as much interference. Overlay data, I also have, oops, I hit the wrong button. Overlay data, I also have to show the depth, water temp, unit voltage, speed, and time of day. When you have it on the main screen, though, it's only going to show on one of those. So if you have it set for both of them, it'll show on the LiveScope or the Panoptix, whichever unit is up there on the top. And then installation. Now on this one I do have the install depth set to 1 foot. It's set a little bit lower than my LiveScope. It's set on the actual head of my trolling motor. So I have it set on 1 foot. It's going to give me a little bit more room as far as picture goes. And so I have it set. AHRS is on. Calibrate compass. Same thing as before. It sets the compass direction of your PS22. And that is it. So not a lot of crazy settings. Just more or less straight out of the box with PS22. The LiveScope, I change the gain every time that I get out to the water. So that is how I set up my Garmin Panoptix and LiveScope on my boat to be effective out there on the water and catch more and bigger bass. I'm going to be doing more of these type of videos, overlaying Garmin LiveScope and Panoptix clips in my videos so you guys can see how I'm using this technology to find more, bigger, and better quality bass. Locating structure, locating cover, and finding fish under the water. Also, if you guys want to check out any of these products that are shown in this video, whether it's the Garmin LiveScope transducer, the PS22, or any of the graphs, the 7610, the 1242, or the 1042 XXV, you guys can check them out down in the description below. But as always, thank you guys for watching. Any questions or comments, let me know down in the comment section below. If you're not already, hit the subscribe button. And as always, thank you guys for watching. Take care, tight lines. God bless. Pursue your passion.